Hey, business building warrior, this is Jim Cockrum. Welcome to Silent Sales Machine Radio. We're going to do an interview today with another one of the incredible Proven Amazon Course success story students. If you weren't aware, that's what this podcast is about. 85% of the time, it's an interview with one of the successful students that we've trained in our Amazon seller strategies. We got hundreds of these episodes where people tell their story of going from, in many cases, knowing nothing about e-commerce to jumping into incredible businesses that they build. It always takes a lot of work, blood, sweat, tears, and sacrifice, but we've got a system, we've got a program that works extremely well. If you're positioned well and you have the margin in your life to build a business, this is a beautiful model that has produced so many great success stories. And our guest today, Paul Sauché, has been in our community for quite a while. I learned a lot about him today. This is a longer episode, so we went ahead and made it a two-part episode. And on today's part one, you're going to hear a lot of the story. Then on the following day after this episode is released, tomorrow, you will hear the next part of his story, because we've discovered that if we put an episode out and it's too long, sometimes people skip it like, that's too much. So we just kind of split it in half. So enjoy part one of this conversation today with Paul. Now, what he's done is gone through the basics of not really knowing much about e-commerce to stepping into some of the early business models and some connections in our community many years ago. His story starts in 2016, I think he said, and here we are in summer of 2023. So it's a bit of ground to cover with his story. But once he finally got into building his business and using e-commerce, man, he built some special stuff. He had a very successful prep center in our community that's still operational, still doing well. Actually, we've got, if you don't know what a prep center is, you can go over to prepcenternetwork.com. These are warehouses basically run by different people in our community or in other communities that receive the inventory from Amazon sellers and get it prepped to send into Amazon. That's how international sellers, for example, people who live outside the United States, can buy and sell inventory inside the United States without ever seeing or touching it. A lot of our students do the exact same thing. They buy their inventory, send it to a prep center. Well, Paul ran one of those. He was also very successful in selling on Amazon himself, and some of the brands that he discovered along the way, he would reach out, contact them, build unique relationships, get into wholesale arrangements. And one of those companies actually went on to hire him, made an attractive offer he couldn't refuse. They bought his companies and then made him a very attractive offer to come work exclusively for them. They were so impressed with the Amazon skills that he'd learned just by being a member of this community, applying the Proven Amazon course, the coaching lessons. Yes, he was a coaching student on our team. He's actually created some content with us over the years as well. He's had an incredible journey. And what I really enjoyed today, of several things I enjoyed today, but one of them was he's very transparent about the challenges that he's had, especially personal challenges. He had some struggles with alcohol. It about ended the whole thing. He about lost his family, his kids, his business, everything. And this business and focusing on it in this community and some of the lessons he learned here helped him get turned around. And he shares that today. I also love that there's a very longitudinal feel to this thing. This is a long period of time. The things that we teach around here, the concepts, the foundational strategies and the foundational belief systems that we have in this community have served him very well over a long period of time. And here he is in his mid-30s, as he shares, with financially doing extremely well, completely out of debt, making a lot of money, family and marriage heading in a good track, spiritually grounded, with a bright future, and just the way entrepreneurship and business ties into that entire long-term story. You'll see what I mean. We cover a lot of ground today, which again, that's why it was two-part episode. Hey, if you're new around here, one other thing I want to let you know about, we're still extending the free offer that you can grab a copy of my book that's been read by over 1 million people. It's been updated 11 times, including most recently here just a few weeks ago. And you can get it 100% free by texting the word free to this phone number. Write it down or rewind it and check this out later. We'll stick this link in the show notes as well with the phone number if you're not smart where you can write it down. But that phone number is 507-800-9999. 0090. If you live in the US or Canada, you can text that number. You'll get a free copy digitally delivered to your phone instantly, and you can enjoy the multiple income stream strategy lessons from one of the best-selling books in all of e-commerce history, believe it or not. It's done really, really well over the years. We've got thousands and thousands of 5-star reviews on Amazon, but right now we're just pushing it straight out for free to launch this book so you can get a feel for what this community is all about and all these great success stories, what they all have in common, the foundational elements of success that go into building a beautiful e-commerce business with multiple streams of income, which is what Paul talks about today as well in our interview. So check the show notes for some of the links that we mentioned today. We'll be referencing some websites and such. That'll all be near this video or audio if you're listening. Thanks for hanging out with us today. And like I said, as a reminder, this is part one of a 2-part episode with Paul Sauché. Enjoy. So Paul, welcome to Silent Sales Machine Radio, man. Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
It's going to be a fun conversation today. We chatted a little bit before we hit record. We're like, hey, man, we got to get this stuff recorded. So let's go. I want to hear your story, get caught up. I know a fair bit about you. Most listeners probably know nothing about you. So, let's get into it.
Yeah, so start out with how I found e-commerce. This was back in 2014, which doesn't sound that long ago, but it was almost a decade.
Yeah, 10 years coming up on it.
Crazy. Yeah. So, when I found e-commerce, I was working at a missionary training school in Florida. And I was just transitioning out of that job. I used to be a farm manager at a simulated developing village in Central Florida. And I was teaching people how to grow plants in developing countries and raise animals. And I was fresh out of college. So I worked that job for 3 to 4 years, and then I was transitioning out of that. And I met this guy, Bob Farewell. And I was just looking for a job in the middle of, as I'm transitioning, what to do. And Bob was like, hey, I need some help fulfilling orders for my business. And so come to find out, that was my first introduction to Jim Cochran coaching and stuff. I had no idea what it was. So I was really skeptical.
Yeah.
But Bob was
one of our students from way back. Yeah. It's very successful. I don't remember what numbers he was running at, but a man I have a lot of trust and respect for as well. Good, really good guy.
I mean, he must have been doing okay at the time because there was 5 or 6 of us, running around filling orders and doing all sorts of things. And so, but he was buying and selling diabetic test strips on eBay at the time. And I know a lot's changed with that business model over the years, but at the time it was thriving and doing well. And so that was my first introduction into e-com, but also what it looks like to be home and kind of make your own schedule.
Right.
And I really, really respected Bob. They homeschooled their families. They had a really neat business where they traveled to homeschool conventions throughout the year. And so my wife and I, this is pre-kids, really just like soaked up everything that we could from Bob and his wife. And so fast forward a little bit, we go to Louisiana, drop our stuff off. My wife and I go to Thailand for a few months and do some mission work there, come back home. And so we're like, now what? We're again in another transitionary period. And so I'm landscaping and I'm doing all this physical work and I enjoy it and it's great. I started my own landscape company. It's doing okay. And then I talked to the guy that was the best man in my wedding. His name's Joe. And he says, hey, I know you're always looking for different stuff to do. There's this thing called Amazon FBA. And then he says, and there's this community that Jim Cochran runs. And there's Jim Cochran coaching and all this stuff. I was like, that's the second time in a few years I've heard this guy's name. I probably should check it out. And it's from 2 people that I really love and respect.
Okay.
And knowing that in the world of e-commerce coaching and all this, snake oil goes right there with it. And it's like, well, how can you really trust them and all that? And so I knew from 2 people that I trusted, I was like, okay, I can trust this community. And then come to find out it's faith-based but not in a way where you have to believe, right? It's like, this is just the general nature of the community. And so that's how I found Jim Cochran in your group. And I was on the sidelines for a while. I think for the first year of doing Amazon FBA, I was doing retail arbitrage. I was just huffing it, figuring things out on my own. And I was making money, but the growth trajectory was slow. Like I was figuring things out, but it was pretty tough at that time. So this was 2015. I'll talk about the first product that I sold, which were these Star Wars glasses, these drinking glasses. I think I bought them from Marshall's or Target. And I remember I sold them while I was asleep. I think I bought them for $10 and I sold them for $30. And I was like, I'm a millionaire. I just made money while I was asleep.
Proof of concept. Uh,
That's right.
that's an
And
exciting moment for all of us, man. I remember those early days, for me, much earlier than yours, but just the idea of waking up in the morning and checking to see how much money you made was just unheard of, and just beautiful. Such a great feeling. I became hooked very quickly. For me, we're talking, 1999, probably something like that. But just
yeah,
that, wow, using the internet to make money, sell stuff to strangers. Yeah,
yeah, and it's I think the thing that really got me was the scalability of it.
yeah.
Like I could huff out a bunch of work in, let's say, a 3 to 4 day period, and then I could monitor it and check sales and do other things.
Hmm.
For me, when I first got started, I was landscaping, and then on rainy days, that's what I did for work. I figured things out, and I found out I was like, oh my god, I'm making more money doing like buying stuff from retail stores than I am landscaping.
Yeah,
And then we got pregnant with our first kid, and so when that happened, that was like, okay, how cool would it be if I could do what Bob and Tina have done and others have done, where I could be home with my kids and be a part of raising them. And if I want the option to go to the park at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday, I can. I don't have to punch a clock. I don't have to. So that was my why in the beginning, and I had this base number of like, if I can just make this amount, then all bills are paid and I can be. And what was crazy is how fast that happened, but it was accelerated because I bought the coaching from y'all. And this was back in probably 2016, 2017. So I was
yeah.
doing Amazon for a while. And then I said, you know what, like if I really want to make this thing something and really grow it and scale it, I think it would be a really wise investment to get a coach that's been there, done that, got the t-shirt, seen the pitfalls, and help guide me along the way. And it changed the trajectory of life for me. And so, I not just the coaching, but the people that I met, the amount of people that I could reach out to, any question that I had, I didn't have to go search it out on my own. I could just ping my coach or hit it on the next session. And so I started out doing retail arbitrage, online arbitrage, and then I found the wholesale model, and that just fell right. I absolutely loved it. I personally love the wholesale model because of the relationship side of things.
Mhm.
I love chatting with other business owners, figuring out what their problems are, and all of that. And the way that I looked at wholesale, I looked at my suppliers as my customers at the end of the day. So I would say, hey, supplier A, how can I serve you? What do you need help with? If you don't need help, like kudos, I'm glad you're doing well on Amazon, keep going. But if you do need help, and I know I can help you, like there was often this win-win scenario. And so that's where things really started to take off for me. Again, all this was learned from your community. And Teresa Rose was my coach. I don't know if she's still coaching.
Absolutely. Yeah. Still a valued
Yeah,
member of the team. She's got 1,000 projects at any given time, but still
yeah.
creating content with us. And yeah, talk to her frequently.
So I think I'll forever be indebted to Teresa for the knowledge and stuff that she gave me. And she was just sharing her experience, right? Like that was the beauty of it. So, we were talking about this a little bit before the podcast. Something that happens, at least this was my experience, as I hit these goals and I was home with my kids and business is successful. And there was a lot of failures. I lost money all throughout this time, but I had these little failures here and there. And I would always say, I just need to win a little bit more than I lose. Just keep going up. But with every time I lost, I always looked at that as I just paid for experience. I just paid for education, and would reassess and okay, what did I do? Let's not do that again. Keep going on. But as I found some success, I almost found myself like I'm home, I'm raising the kids, I'm doing this thing that I dreamed of doing, but I found myself almost in this like I'm not going to say a state of misery, but it was almost like this hopelessness of like there's got to be to this. And the reason we started doing this podcast was we started talking about recovery. So I actually fell into a really dark spot where I was abusing alcohol. And, because of the financial freedom that I had, well, I didn't know what to do with it. Like I wasn't equipped. And so I was just basically trying to drown out my thoughts. And so I would start drinking at noon and drink all day long. And meanwhile, I'm going to church and I'm doing all these things and just basically living this dual life. And
Mm.
and so I hit my bottom in 2021. There's a lot that happened between 2017 and 2020, but there was a long time frame where there was good times and bad times, and good times and bad times, and then towards the very end, the drinking really got really bad. And what's interesting about alcoholism is that the alcohol is the solution to my problems, and then it becomes the problem itself.
Yeah.
It's no longer the solution. And so, for me, I just got to this point where it wasn't good. Like I was like marriage was on the line. I've got two kids at home at this point.
Mhm.
Life is really unhealthy. I'm going to therapy. I'm trying to figure all this stuff out. What's wrong? I got daddy issues. I got all these things that are surfacing up. And it's like, because I found this financial freedom, now I got to deal with life. I got to deal with the real issues because I'm no longer really like the dollar is great, right? Like we all want that financial freedom. But then when we get it, what do we do with it? For me, it was this like, oh no moment of I got what I asked for, and but is it really what I wanted? Like everything else up to that point was just this really big distraction to my real problems. And for me, the ultimate problem was I needed a relationship with a power greater than myself, and I didn't have that. And
Mhm.
so getting into recovery introduced me to that. I call my higher power God. Like that's where all that eventually ended up. So let me backtrack a little bit to where I'm running my Amazon business. In 2020, I opened up a prep center right when COVID hit.
Right.
And so I bought a 25,000 square foot warehouse. This was all like successes just keeping going and going and going. So I buy this warehouse with a partner. Long story short, I end up just owning the warehouse and the business in the warehouse. And this prep center goes from 0 to 100, just like immediately. I'm an Amazon seller. I know what Amazon sellers need. And then we just start servicing clients, and just saying, hey, like, how can we help? Again, always with that service mindset of how can we help. And again, for me, it was like this beautiful time of success. And then also this like really hard time of being miserable. And
Yeah. What a contrast. Financial success, achieving what you thought were all these big life financial goals, but it wasn't fulfilling you. And the crutch you turned to quiet that part of your soul was slowly killing you.
yeah,
And
yeah,
territory familiar for those who maybe haven't heard many of our episodes. That's very familiar territory for my family, and we've spent. My mom just had her 45-year clean and sober token through Celebrate Recovery, which is like a Christian version of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I'm very familiar with that territory. It's very close to home for me to hear these stories because I was raised in an alcoholic's home till I was about 10 or so. So I know the impact on, there's a very predictable pattern of the impact that your decisions had on your kids, on your wife. And thank God, man, I could tell their stories without hearing from them because it has about the same impact on every family that it touches once it slips into abuse, which you don't get to choose when that happens. It's that switch flips and you're not the one that flipped it. And suddenly you're a different dude. And so I'm familiar with that journey, and I appreciate your transparency is the point I'm trying to make is I come from a place of I can relate. I've seen that, been there, done that. I wasn't playing your role, but the unhealthy effect, from every vantage point is, it's a disease that impacts the entire family is a good, clean way to say what I'm trying to say. So
absolutely.
I
It
appreciate your
does. And
transparency because,
yeah,
this is a podcast about Amazon and e-commerce, yes, but it's also about the impact these things have on real world relationships. And so, yeah, keep it rolling, man. I'm with you, buddy.
yeah, no, I appreciate that. And, so you understanding the product of living with an alcoholic up to 10, I think I was the product of one as well, or am. My dad's alcoholic. His daddy was alcoholic, and my smart brain said this won't happen to me. Of course not. And man, it is a disease. I'm glad you said that. Like it is. And the crazy part about alcoholism is that the disease wants me to forget that I have it. It'd be like if I had cancer and then I just woke up and was like, oh, I don't actually have cancer. It's like, no, you do.
Yeah.
Like that's the disease, and they say it's cunning, baffling, and powerful.
Right.
I'll never forget when I hit my bottom, I called my cousin who was in sobriety. He was about 8 years sober at the time, and I told him what was going on. Like life is about to get really hard for me. I'm about to lose my wife and kids. I'm about to lose all the possessions that I've worked hard for. I'm about to lose all of it. And he said, Paul, it sounds to me like you're powerless over alcohol and your life is unmanageable. And the
Step
unmanageability
one.
part really got me.
Okay.
That's step one. And when he said it, I said, Mike, that's exactly what's going on right now. I've never heard it said that way at that time, but that's step one.
Yeah.
And so at that moment, I was like, I am powerless over alcohol and my life is unmanageable. But for the outsiders looking in, my life looked wonderful.
Yeah.
It
High
looked like this
functioning.
beautifully, yeah, this high function. But it was also the high function allowed me to continue on for so long.
Right. It
The,
allowed you
you
to
know,
fund your habit. And
yeah.
it was all destined to come to an end at some point.
Yeah, and so when I got into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, this guy who's actually my sponsor today, he said, "You haven't lost everything yet, and yet stands for you're eligible to." He
Mhm.
said, "Paul, you're eligible at any given point to go pick that bottle up again and to lose everything." He said, "You haven't lost it yet. The only reason you haven't lost it yet is because you hit your bottom and you're working these steps and you're doing what's suggested." That
Mm.
was another thing for me getting into Amazon, like with working regular jobs. I never wanted to listen to anybody. I didn't like authority. I didn't like all these things. If somebody
Sure.
tried to tell me what to do, I was like, no, it has to be my idea,
And
even
some
if
of
I'm
those
going to run it
traits
to the
serve
ground.
us well as entrepreneurs.
Right.
I've got that in that streak in me as well. Like I can't remember ever having a job where I wasn't constantly just like, why are we doing it this way? Shouldn't we be doing it this way? Trying to improve. Like if I was running this place, it would be so much better. Like I'm one of those guys too, So coming from a history of alcoholism, that little switch that flipped for you. Thank God it never flipped for me, but I could very easily I could very easily have your
Yeah.
story so
Yeah.
easily,
Yeah.
coming from a long line of guys that when life got rough, that's
Well,
kind of what they drifted towards.
and I think what you're experiencing is your parents. This is what's interesting about the generational piece of it. Like when a generation stops it, it changes like 4 or 5 generations something,
Yeah. Amen.
and that's the it stops with me
Yeah.
mentality. It's like,
Yeah. I
but
remember at a
but
young
the
age deciding this craziness stops here. I
yeah, but
didn't
your
know what it
parents
meant,
modeling that,
but I'm
like
like,
you're
I'm not going to be like that.
yeah, but being raised in a home where your mom and dad modeled that out, like what a gift,
Yeah. Yeah.
like that. And that's really where the thing about it is it's not like I can say, hey, for the next 30 years, I'm going to be in recovery. No, for the next 24 hours, I'm going to be in recovery
Yeah. Today I'm
because
going
it's,
to,
it's
yeah.
one day at a time,
Hmm.
but seeing the benefits of that and, your kids and then grandkids and that like, it just keeps going down the line of modeling this life of I have to depend on God, otherwise I can't do it. And that for me was the crux of it because in recovery, it's one of these things of like, hey, we're going to help you get sober because these drugs or this substance you were abusing it and you were drowning out your problems. It was your solution and now it's your problem. Well, now we have a new solution, and that solution is a relationship with God. And for the alcoholic, for me, I was agnostic. When I was raised in church, and then I ended up in recovery agnostic, going, this church thing doesn't work. And then they say, hey, the answer to your problems is God, and I go, oh no,
Not again.
and not again. And man, I can tell you right now, the chaos that I've produced in my life was not because of God; it was because of me.
Mm.
And the chaos goes away when I depend on
Yeah.
God.
It's
And
equated to like a surrender,
yeah,
that you come to appreciate what it means to like, okay, God, I knew you were there all along. I was trying to pretend you weren't.
yep,
And I'm just going to give in to this incredible design and plan that you have for my life. And I'm going to, what do you got, man? I'm broke. I can't do this. Yeah.
that's
That
right.
friend that contacted you and said, "Now, your life's unmanageable. It's become out of control. You got to admit that. That's the first step. If you think you can manage it, you're not ready yet." That's what I call like hitting bottom, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's out of control.
and yeah, and the hidden bottom. I love this other phrase. It said the bottom's just where you want to stop digging. Like
Yeah.
you can keep using this shovel and digging hole after hole after hole. Like
Mhm.
for my dad, for him, it took losing everything. He lost his wife and kids. He squandered millions of dollars. Like I watched it in front of my face
Wow.
happen. And
Yeah.
and I think that for me was the really scary part was like, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna just build these businesses and like who cares what kind of talent I have if I lose it all? Like if I go and squander it, what
Mhm.
does it really and so yeah, I mean, getting sober changed like getting your coaching, running companies, learning a lot, and then in the middle of that, getting sober and then having a clear mind, man, things just went bananas. Like, and it wasn't because, oh, Paul's so smart. It's like, no, I can think clearly.
Yeah.
Like I'm not making these wild assumptions about people, or I'm not trying to chase a bunch of shiny objects. Like, I'm focused, I know what I'm doing, and I know where I'm going.
Hey, we'll get back to the program in just a second, but I've got to tell you about the great sponsor today, Seller Board. Get over to silentjimdotcom/numbers. Spell it out. silentjim.com/numbers numbers. You're going to see a link to the tool that has become quickly the preferred tool in our community for helping you track your numbers, helping you know which of your ASINs are making a profit and which ones you should walk away from, at least temporarily, because you're not making any money. It can be fairly tricky to know and dial in all the Amazon fees and all the expenses. Well, that's what Sellerboard helps you do, among a whole bunch of other things. It's a great tool that's become a great sponsor of this community. We've helped send a lot of very happy users their way. They've got a great discount for you as well. Get over to silentjim.com/numbers and check out Sellerboard. You're going to love what these guys are up to. It just keeps getting better and better, and their starting prices are so ridiculously low. It becomes a bit of a no-brainer. Go check it out. That's Sellerboard at silentjim.com/numbers. Let's get back to the show.
Getting sober changed, like getting your coaching, running companies, learning a lot, and then in the middle of that, getting sober and then having a clear mind, man, things just went bananas. Like, and it wasn't because, oh, Paul's so smart. It's like, no, I can think clearly.
Yeah.
Like I'm not making these wild assumptions about people, or I'm not trying to chase a bunch of shiny objects. Like, I'm focused, I know what I'm doing, and I know where I'm going. So for example, the prep center. I started that prep center with the intention of never having to step foot in it. I wanted to run it remotely. So a very physical business. I wanted to run similar to Amazon. And so I ended up doing that. Like, we use tools like Slack, Google Sheets, everything's in the cloud. I keep my pulse on it. I can talk to clients on the phone. And so today I step into that prep center maybe once every 6 to 8 weeks, just touch base. Hey, how's it going? Like, there's a manager running it. There's a team of 10 to 12, given the time of year. So, but when I built that, it was really frustrating. I got sober in the middle of that. And, we talk about transparency. Like, I ended up sharing with a few of my higher up employees, like, hey, this is what I'm going through. I just want you to know, like, if I've done anything, caused any wreckage of the past, I want to clean that up. And then start moving forward. And so that prep center just took off. So now I've got my Amazon sales business, I've got my prep center, and I start talking to, we're getting into the acquisition piece here, start talking to this company and trying to work with them where we would become their exclusive seller. That's what we always aimed for, was we want to work with brands and get exclusivity, sometimes on a handshake, sometimes with a document, depending on the company. And so by this point, we had a pretty good track record of, like, hey, this is the work we've done. Like, we've taken brands where they were really struggling. We paid for their PPC. Like, that was part of the deal. We would pay for PPC. We would clean up their listings for free in exchange for exclusivity. And so I'm working with this
Not
this
even
company.
in exchange for a share of the sales, just for exclusivity.
Yeah, we want the whole deal. Like,
That's
if I'm going to do all this work for you.
I don't want to blow past that too fast, because I don't know that I've ever heard anyone pursue what you just suggested at scale. You find a great product. There's a lot of other sellers selling it. So you approach that brand and you say, hey guys, here's the deal. Let me clean up your listings. Let me did you put the brand under their name? Or did
so the brands
or did you just say, I want to be the only seller, and that's the deal?
No, so the products were under their brand name. So if they had a brand registry, like,
under their account, though, never under
not under their
your account. So you're the exclusive seller. Gotcha.
Yes. So if the brand themselves were selling on Amazon, I would never go and target those guys.
Right.
Because they already know what they're doing. They've got it taken care of.
In some cases, yeah. But
most cases,
that wasn't your sweet spot. Your sweet spot was, there's 30 other sellers or whatever. This is a hot brand. Hey, I want an exclusive, right? That's what the word means. I want you to allow me to be the only seller. I'm going to clean things up, help you tighten it up. And so you continue to sell. So you're just getting your commissions from your Amazon sales. They're not paying you at all, but you've cleaned up their listings and That is a great model. I love it.
Yeah,
It does keep a lot of the control on their side of the fence, though, for them to do something different at some point, potentially.
it does.
Did you ever get burned?
There was early on, and this is where contracts I've learned to. I used to hate legal
Yeah.
stuff. Like it always made me really nervous.
Yeah.
Today I'm really comfortable with it because I've gotten familiar with it. So getting just a contract drawn up of like, hey, like we're gonna go do all this work. This is the expectation that we're gonna grow sales. At least a minimum of a year contract to like let us do that. And then here's the thing, if they're making money and we're making money,
Everyone's
like
happy. Yeah.
everybody's happy. And so that's the scenario I always try to create. And you talk about the scenario where there's 30 other sellers. Oftentimes it's like the wild, wild west, right? There's brand integrity gets lost,
Yeah.
miserable photos, like there's all sorts of issues that go along with that. Yeah, the product sells. So oftentimes I would prep the brands like, hey, look, you're gonna probably see a dip in sales like internally because you've got 30 resellers buying your product. It's overstocked on Amazon, the price is being driven down, your brick and mortar retailers are upset because it's lower than their price. So like what we would say is we're going to keep it higher than your MSRP, maybe 15-20% higher. Your brick and mortar guys are going to be ecstatic because they are no longer like, oh, Amazon's always,
Right. And that's a lot of the pressure brands feel. And let me just dwell on that for just a second, Paul, because sometimes people are like, oh, what advantage can I bring to this brand? It's going to be music to their ears if you say, hey, I can make the noise go away from the brick and mortar channel where they're complaining about your Amazon pricing and you feel like you can't control it. If you had an exclusive seller, you could control it. I'd be the only one selling it. And I'd be helping you fight off the other sellers who are driving the price into the basement. You're making more money. I'm getting paid for my services. Your brick and mortar channels stop complaining about the unfair pricing practices of your brand, right? Because that is a very loud voice. And I say all the time, if you go to trade shows and you talk to brands and you say, hey, how do you feel about Amazon? 95% of them are going to drop their head and just like, oh my gosh, we don't know what to do with this thing, man. We got to feed this monster, but oh, what a pain in the butt. And you can start to solve those problems. I mean, this is a massive business opportunity that's right under the nose of any of us who have any degree of experience at all. And you just kind of wandered into this. I mean, this isn't like you set out one day and like, I'm going to rule the world by going deep into this. It's like these brands just started making sense to have these conversations.
Absolutely.
Very organic.
And there's a lot of pivots you can do too. I mean, one of the things that I would do is, hey, if you don't want to sell directly to me, I would even give them the option. If you want to sell it yourself, I'll come in and consult. I'm going to charge you a really nice amount for me to teach your team how to do it. Yeah.
That's the model we typically teach. And then I'd get a percentage of all the sales that result is how we teach. That's the proven product partnering. It's one of the modules inside the proven Amazon course. Did you ever go through that by any chance? It sounds like you were kind of doing it before it was a thing.
No, so I remember going through that module and going, this makes a lot of sense. I think where I fell short is I didn't put a high enough dollar amount on my value. Like I didn't realize how valuable it really was to these brands.
Yeah.
And that was just I guess more of a philosophical issue of like, what am I actually worth here? If I run out the numbers and I say I'm going to make these guys $100,000 in a year, like minimum 10%, 20%, like whatever that amount is, that I'm comfortable making, and so, but that model, I think I've taken that and then my experience with wholesale and kind of morphed it a little bit. Just
that's what it sounds like. Because you're doing some things that were fairly unique there, but no reason you can't pivot in that direction. Be the exclusive seller.
Yeah. So, and this comes from, everything that you talk about, which is multiple streams of income. And so, Amazon sales, Amazon service, like the prep center side, and then consulting, like being able to hit all of those. And that allows me to keep the conversation going in a lot of different ways. Hey, I can teach y'all how to sell on Amazon. I can do it for you. We can prep it for you. I can come in to your warehouse and help your guys understand. Because one of the things I've learned, manufacturers want to manufacture. They don't have the abilities or capabilities to go and do all this on their own. That's why it's such a pain in the butt for them, because the product comes off the line and they want to ship pallets. They want to ship from cases. They don't want to deal with all the nitpick stuff that Amazon. That's why Amazon's so much of a problem to them, because it's direct to consumer. Like it's all these other issues going on. Unless they've got a vendor central account and they're selling, even then it's still a pain. Like there's,
Of course.
you know,
Yeah,
so
there's so many
that's where
problems that you can solve with a bit of Amazon experience, and it's not, and that trend isn't going to drift in the other direction anytime soon. E-commerce is drifting bigger. Amazon's drifting bigger, and if it's not Amazon, it'll be something else. But understanding how to get the physical products to the end customer using e-commerce is, I would argue, one of the most valuable skill sets that you could be going after. You don't need a college degree. You need to sell a few things online. You need to learn the Amazon business, and that opens up doors of opportunity to you. If you can navigate Amazon, you can navigate Shopify and eBay and all these other things. Like, get into Amazon. I think you better have a really good excuse as a young person not to be learning some e-commerce skills, selling physical products or digital goods, just because you're writing your own ticket. The world is opening up. I think we're in the infancy still. That's where I'm at with all this, Paul. We're in the infancy.
Oh yeah,
I've been doing this 20 years, and I'm like a baby who just learned to walk as far as the land of opportunity. Would you agree with that?
absolutely.
As
And
far as future trends?
absolutely, yeah. And it's not, like, so I'm in the grocery world now, working with grocery brands. I'll talk about this in a minute, but Amazon compared to Walmart is still really tiny in terms of total sales for
Right.
these companies.
Now online they
I
dominate,
mean,
but total sales, they're minuscule.
right, total sales. And so, and that's where the shift is happening. I think that's where a lot of brands are at right now. Is they're like, Amazon's big, but not big enough for them. Like it's not total, like in their whole portfolio of customers.
Mhm.
And so, but it's kind of like this pesky mosquito, like when you're sleeping and the mosquito's buzzing in your ear and you're like, just go. And it keeps coming back. Like it's not going to go away. And so we can come in with these experiences that we've had of retail arbitrage or just making a bundle on Amazon and understanding PPC, keywords, title search, like some simple tools that they would go out and pay Microsoft, $100,000 a year for these tools when you've got it for $39.99 a month.
Right. Yeah. Come learn the
Like,
basic skills. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
It's almost like, okay, I could do you a favor. We'll charge $10,000 for our content. Now, do you believe that it's because it's worth that? Now, do you
yeah,
believe that it's worth it? Because it is. But we just happen to only be charging a few dollars for this skill set. Yeah, I love that mosquito analogy. Actually, I'm probably going to use that a little bit because, e-commerce is still only 16, 18% of all retail, right? That's the latest numbers I've heard. That's US government data. It's like, why even worry about that? 85% of retail is still in the stores, brick and mortar. Like, who cares? Well, no, let's play that out 5 years, 10 years. That number is going to probably double by
you
then.
look at Instacart. I mean, they have gone bananas.
Yep.
They haven't even IPO'd yet, and they're massive.
Huge.
But what Instacart's doing is they're giving the consumer the option of where to shop,
Right.
and it comes to their door. And so every retailer that's large, Target, Walmart, whatever, Kroger, and every manufacturer cannot ignore Instacart. And if you do, you're left in the dust.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think that, like maybe there's a few handful of brands that have enough brand equity out there that they don't have to worry about it. But for most brands, it's like get on the bandwagon or expect to be dumped in 5 years, and that's Amazon, that's Instacart. Walmart.com is making some serious pushes right now. They've dumped in a ton of money. That's up and coming. And so, yeah, it's not going away. I wanted to jump back to something you said about having a college degree. This is really funny to me because I was expelled from high school.
Yeah,
And
good for
and
you.
yeah, I remember this was my early entrepreneur years. Thank God they were channeled in a good way later in life. But I was breaking in and stealing test answers, and I was selling the answers to other students, and I got busted.
Wow.
And getting caught was one of the best things that ever happened because
Of
it was
course.
like, oh
Yeah.
no, like I was a troubled teen that needed some guidance.
Yeah.
And so I went on to college and I got a general studies degree just to get out. Like, just let me get out of college. I really had no desire for it at the time. I was learning small business and horticulture and different things. And so with Amazon, people ask me like, "Oh, did you go to school for that?" No, man. I just so tenacious that I'm going to go and learn whatever I have to. And I found out that for me, I used to always think that I didn't like learning things like English, math, and all this stuff.
Right.
But when it came to something I really wanted to learn, like Amazon, and I could see results really quickly, and I could, man, I was just like eat, sleep, and drink this stuff all the time. I remember being up, I'm a night owl, so it'd be 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm sourcing from a wholesale list, you know. So yeah, I wanted to jump back to that. So anybody that's listening, that's a younger person that feels like, oh, I can't do this, it's too hard, whatever. Man, just get after it.
Well, you talked
The
about some of
knowledge
your
is there.
heroes. Bob Fairwell, homeschool. We homeschooled our five. The experiment was a success for our family. Like we jumped in e-commerce from home under the same roof, homeschooling our kids. I mean, they played sports. They've got a great friend network. They're all outgoing, launching successful businesses. The experiment was a huge success. And our simple philosophy was we want them to have a love of learning. There's a few basics you're going to have to learn. We're going to instill some biblical, timeless values into these kids. And, they're going to be raised understanding what our value system is. And then we're going to expose them to all kinds of ideas. And they haven't lost out on anything by having that experience. And they have a love of learning to the point where, like one of our kids, he's like, I think I want to build a computer. I'm like, all right, raise the money, watch the YouTube videos, buy some books, build a computer, do it. And that was his 3-month, 4-month project. And he built it and it worked. And he launched his YouTube channel, right? I mean, it's just, let the kid take on the stuff that they're built for, that interests them, that they love, while having them do some reading. And that is a well-educated kid that's ready to tackle the world. Completely agree. And so you get some of these basic skill sets of entrepreneurship, kind of feed that in, and suddenly you've got somebody who can go anywhere. Just do.
That's like,
especially this skill set, this e-commerce skill set, man. I don't care. Like, I'm not into e-commerce. You learn it anyway. This is the language the world's slowly going to be speaking more and more and more. This is a skill set everyone needs to have at least a little bit of, and it's just not hard to do either. To be where you become, and I think you're a poster child for this, Paul, of these basic skills. It's like you're not sitting at the front of the class on any of these things you just discussed. Really, as far as like the most accomplished, but the opportunities have been there. You've pursued them. You've talked, had a few conversations, and now you're doing really, really well. I haven't really gotten into the numbers, but just because you had a few basic skills and had a few conversations, it's taken you beautiful places, and no traditional education needed. And that's there for whoever wants to pursue it, from my vantage point.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so what we're doing with our kids today is, same thing, homeschooling them, opportunities, lots of reading. My 7-year-old, she's into making these pot holders now. Some little stuff. Like, hey, like I think she wanted to make some money to buy something. So I said, well, look, I'm not going to give you the money. Like, I'm going to show you how to make some money. And so she makes these pot holders. Her mom puts them on Facebook, sells like a couple $100 worth of these pot holders. And she's like, oh my goodness, like I did this thing. And and what was cool is she gets all this money. She's like, I just made, let's call it $200. And I said, well, no, you didn't make $200. I'm gonna show you what a profit and loss statement is. And she was like, what? His 7-year-old brain's like P&L, And so I said, your grandma bought the loops, and you got the loom, and your sister helped, so you got to pay her $3, and whatever else, and like that. She's 7. She's just a kid.
And then you talk about taxes, and you slide 70% of the money off the table, right, when she thinks you're done, right?
That's right. That dad tax. So, man, this is just another gift that's been a product of doing this and living this lifestyle, And for me, it's a gift of sobriety. It's a gift of this coaching. And I strive to keep that perspective. And I notice that when things kind of get off the rails a little bit, it's not because anything around me is maybe changed. It's my perspective has changed. And so for me today, it's how do I keep that perspective?
Hey, sorry to cut off the show right there. Such a great story. And I'm so proud of Paul and his journey. It was a thrill hanging out with him and getting caught up with him and hearing the updates on this great story. But we're going to have part 2 for you tomorrow. Something that really stands out to me in the second part of this interview is just how valuable those basic e-commerce skills are. If you know how to sell on Amazon and you're confident navigating the world of Amazon, that is an incredibly valuable skill set that can open up so many doors. And the second half of Paul's story really illustrates that. So the next podcast episode after this one will be the rest of Paul's story. So we'll have that for you as soon as possible. Check back in with us next episode. We'll talk to you then. Hey, one last thing before I let you go today. A little reminder, today's sponsor was Seller Board. They are a tremendous partner of this community. They've been supporting hundreds of users who listen to this show, who are thrilled with the service they're providing from a simple tool that helps you know if you're profitable or not in your Amazon business, which of your ASINs are winning, making you money, which ones are losing, costing you some money that need to be cut out. It would be so helpful to know, wouldn't it? Well, that's what Seller Board does. It's very simple to set up, low costs to get started. They've got a special offer for our community, and you can check it out at silentjimdotcom/numbers. Go check them out. Thanks, Seller Board. Hey, we'll have another great episode for you very soon.